Dan, I can give you confirmation on 2 of the 3 people leaving office. We heard on Vremya, the official Soviet news, that Mr. Pavlov is out of a job, is out of office because of high blood pressure. Interfax, the independent, very reliable news agency, has just issued an express bulletin. I'm translating it as I speak to you. It says that Mr. Yazov has left his post. It says that a call to the Ministry of Defense would not give confirmation nor denial of this, but it says we have information from Russian sources that Dmitry Yazov has left his position as the practical functioning director of the armed forces of the Soviet Union, and that job has been assumed by the head of the general staff, Mikhail Gorbachev, someone whom Steve Cohn can tell you a good deal more about. I have not heard anything about Khrushchev, Dan.
Well, Jonathan Sanders, if you step back for a moment, think for the few seconds you have to think, what are we seeing happening this afternoon, U.S. time, beginning to be the deep hours of the night, Moscow time?
Dan, I think we're beginning to see if all this is falling in place in a logical pattern, and logic is sometimes hard to find here. I think we're beginning to see the key actors crumbling away, or at least the alliance of people who had different goals of this 8-man committee beginning to split up. Ill health is a reason for getting out of office here. When Mikhail Gorbachev had to jettison his then Prime Minister Nikolai Ryzhkov was said to have a heart attack. I think that it is completely possible that this may, I stress, be the beginning of the crumbling, at least of the solid front of the men who've taken over as the emergency committee ruling the Soviet Union. I think that we just have to wait and see what else will happen in this. I would note to you that the person who I would personally think is the most ruthless of this group of people, who is capable of exerting a good deal of force and would not stop at bloodshed in many ways, Boris Pugo, the Minister of the Interior, still seems to be on the committee in charge. Mr. Pugo is a Latvian. He comes out of a KGB background. I think that his kindest detractors in the Soviet Union would label him a political thug.
Stephen Cohen, Jonathan Sanders raises an interesting point. If the reports we have, the head of the KGB, the head of the military, and the minister are all out disassociating themselves from the coup leadership, Jonathan says this at least means that the face of the coup is beginning to crack. But what about the body of the coup? If we see these outward signs that some are breaking away, does it or does it not mean that the coup itself is beginning to crack, or that it has a solid base and just some of the faces are changing?
Lord knows the base is solid. I mean, these men control the KGB, the army, virtually the whole of the industrial and agricultural economy, and the military-industrial complex, which has monopolized for decades the best resources, economic and human resources of the system, and controls about 35 to 40% of the federal budget every year. I mean, this is real power. So what we are talking about at the moment is leadership. The leadership seems to be falling apart. If, in fact, this coup collapses, we are witnessing a very rare event in history, namely a case where ideas, democratic ideas, defeated tanks without bloodshed.
Big if there, and we underscore that if.
Very big if.
Well, let's go back to the telephone and see if we can get up our team, Borovec, who we lost on the telephone inside the Parliament building a short while ago. Artyom, are you there?
Dan?
Yes.
I'm very sorry, but a few more telephone lines were cut during the last 15 minutes. And I'm afraid in an hour we will be left with 0 telephone lines, but I'm using this one. Dan, I wanted to answer your question about Mr. Yanaev's statement that they are not going to launch an attack against the White House here in Moscow before 12 o'clock midnight. Now, the way it's perceived here at the White House is that probably they won't attack before 12 o'clock, but probably this means that they're going to attack at night when nobody will be able to shoot it and make a film of it and send it to the West. This is the way it is perceived right now here. Now, another question, whether the information about the resignation of the members of the military junta is correct. The resignation I have checked the fact about resignation of Mr. Yazov, the Minister of Defense, and they have proved that he has resigned. Mr. Krychkov's head of the KGB resignation was not proved, but still it is believed that it is true here in the White House. And Mr. Pavlov is in the hospital right now with heart disease.
Artem, this is very important for us, that according to the best information inside the Russian Parliament building, and let me pause to remind those who if just joined us, that Boris Yeltsin and his people have begun calling the Russian Parliament building just in sort of slang shorthand, the White House, for obvious reasons, since Boris Yeltsin is the elected president of the Russian Republic. Artem, if you were there, I want to reconfirm here that according to your information, no doubt that the defense minister has indeed resigned.
Yes, according to the information that we have here in the White House, there is no doubt that the defense minister, Mr. Yazov, has resigned. We doubt that Mr. Krychkov has resigned, but we have such an information. We will try to check that.
That would be, so you're certain about the defense minister, not certain about the head of the KGB having resigned.
You're absolutely right.
And the prime minister has gone to the hospital, quote, with a heart ailment, unquote.
Yes, they have just announced it on the official TV program called Vremya, Time.
Now, here's the question, Artem. You know the Soviet Union well. You hear these reports coming in of resignations from the coup leadership. What does this actually mean? If true, if there are 3 resignations or even 2, the head of the military and the prime minister, what does this mean in real terms for Boris Yeltsin's chances of not only surviving, but in the end triumph?
It's hard to say. Mr. Yeltsin has not made any statements about the last resignations of the people inside the military junta, but we believe that today's manifestation that gathered almost 200,000 people around the White House proved and showed the military junta that there's very little they can do with us, even if they have all those divisions of tanks and air force.
Is it the view inside the Russian Parliament building that the coup may be collapsing, or is that too strong an analysis to make at this moment?
Then, unfortunately, the sound is very weak. I can hardly hear you.
The question, Artem, is, given these resignations and the signs of change at the very top of the coup leadership, does this mean that the coup is collapsing, or that simply the coup is changing hands?
Dan, I think I'll be able to answer this question very soon after we make some phone calls and then after I talk to Mr. Yeltsin. Right now it seems that Mr. Yanayev is still acting as the president of the Soviet Union and the leader of the junta. I think they're now changing people inside the junta, and it might happen that very soon we will see some new faces.
Very soon some new faces. Artem, let's be direct here. Yanayev is basically a nobody. Who is it that Boris Yeltsin thinks is the main moving force behind this coup?
If I understood your question correctly, who are the real people who have organized the coup?
Correct.
As I have said in the previous interview, they haven't shown their faces, but they have shown their teeth. I think the reason why Mr. Yakovlev, the father of perestroika and the theoretician of perestroika, one of the closest allies to Mr. Gorbachev, in the past 4 years. He said, as you remember, that the 20 hours, next 20 hours, will be decisive to show in which direction the crisis will develop. I think the reason why he said that we will see the real faces of those people who organized the coup. I don't think that they will leave their positions that fast. I think that they thought about this for many months, and it's only the beginning, Dan.
You think it's only the beginning and not anywhere near the ending of this?
I'm almost sure that this is only the beginning. They are making some tactical changes inside. Probably it's made to distract our attention from what's going on in the streets right now and to think of what's going on in Kremlin. Because honestly, all the journalists are now thinking and talking about these resignations, and nobody's in the streets. So I think that this might be one of the reasons to disorientate us and to direct our attention towards false aims.
Artem, President Bush says that he talked to Boris Yeltsin earlier in the day. Has Yeltsin expressed to you, or any of his staff expressed to you, what that conversation was basically about?
Mr. Bush's statement about the situation in the Soviet Union?
Yes, I was wondering whether you had any information from the Yeltsin side of that conversation about what was said in the conversation.
No, Mr. Yeltsin has said nothing about that, but I will try to find that out, and as soon as I know something, I will get in touch with you, Dan.
All right, fine. If you'll hold the line there, Artem, let's go outside the Russian Parliament building to our correspondent, Bert Quint, who is surveying the scene, keeping it under observation with the thought in mind that the curfew, which was slapped on today, is due to take effect in about 35-40 minutes from now. Bert, what do you see?
Dan, the tension still holds. It's been broken a little bit by announcements of these resignations and cheers by the relatively small crowd outside Parliament. But there is one thing that seems to symbolize the state of the entire country right now. Along one of the roads that these people expect that Soviet tanks will be taking to take over this building, there's a group of women linking arms, creating a human shield, and they're carrying a sign that says, "Soldiers, don't shoot at Soviet mothers." Dan?
Let's go to Jonathan Sanders in our Moscow bureau. Jonathan, we've been able to broadcast regularly, consistently out of Moscow through this whole crisis. Are there any signs that may be curtailed or at least cut back some?
Dan, I don't think that there are any signs quite as yet that there is any intention to do that. We have no indications. In fact, we're getting relatively good cooperation from the people who run the transportation links for our satellites and our video materials out of here. You can imagine that they're swamped by news organizations all over the world. Many of them are Russian patriots themselves. Many of them believe that though they have to do their job and obey the Soviet state authorities, that their hearts are with Boris Yeltsin. So far, we don't seem to have any real problems, but one never knows, Dan. One never knows.
Jonathan, we haven't had much first-hand eyewitness information out of the Baltic states, Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. At last report, the Soviet paratroopers and so-called Black Berets were cracking down in those Baltic states. Any indication that that crackdown has taken effect and is now, in effect, abated, or is still going on?
Dan, it's neither increased nor abated as far as we can tell. We're in regular contact and have very good contacts in Lithuania, and although we understand that the Black Berets are on the move there, we have not heard that they have moved to take the Parliament building. We have not heard of any terrific outrages such as the killings of the border guards that occurred when you were here during the summit a few weeks ago. We have been on the phone yesterday, especially with our contacts in Riga, Latvia. At one time, we actually heard shooting in the background, and we said, is that gunfire or cars backfiring? And our informant said that that was shooting, and we have had reports of people being in the hospital. The reports are very mixed coming in. We hear that the troops are on the move, that there's a lot of military activity there. What the result of it is, I frankly think we can't say.
And moving south in the predominantly Christian Armenia and its killing field, in effect, with predominantly Muslim Azerbaijan. Any reports out of there?
There has been in the Armenia-Azerbaijan area, Dan, a ongoing conflict with the taking of hostages of Soviet soldiers, which really set the Soviet military on edge. All the hostages have been released. We have heard reports, the same reports that Artyom Borovik gave you, that leaders in the Armenian government basically said, we do not care particularly who's in charge of Moscow. We have our own local concerns. Not too much has been heard out of Azerbaijan, Dan. And I must tell you that on the Ukraine, which has declared that the edicts of the Special Emergency Committee are null and void on the territory of the Ukraine, there are several ways to read that. One of them could simply be a repetition of Ukrainian nationalism, in which they refuse to recognize any decrees coming out of Moscow, be they Russian, be they Soviet, or whatever. We're going to have to get a fuller picture on just why those decrees are null and void in the Ukraine. It may be the same old, let us assert our independence, rather than a rejection of the activities of this small group of men backed by the military that are trying to take and hold power in the Soviet capital.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Dan?
In the short time we have left, Steve Cohen, resignations at the top in the coup leadership, curfew declared in Moscow, Boris Yeltsin fearing that the Russian parliament building may be assaulted. You spent your life studying the Soviet Union, making Gorbachev a specialty. Analyze for us, give us an analysis that sums up where we are at this hour in this story.
Clearly, the coup itself is in crisis. The leadership is falling apart. We don't know, excuse me, if the coup is over, or if the coup has fallen into even worse hands. It would seem that they began this coup on the assumption that a show of tanks, a show of force, a show of authoritarianism at the top would trigger a traditional reflex in Russian and Soviet people, that they would submit to authority, and that would be it. That hasn't happened. There's symbolic and real defiance. On the other hand, don't make the mistake of thinking that this is just a bunch of bandits in the night. There is support for this type of politics in the country. Even if this coup collapses, even if the Democrats come back, even if Gorbachev is back in the Kremlin, this struggle is not over, not the struggle for democracy. Moreover, Jonathan Sanders reminds us of another very, very important point. By seeking control, by capturing Moscow, unwittingly, these people who carried out this coup may have further loosened the ties holding Moscow to the republics. Because as Jonathan Sanders reports from Moscow, the Armenians now say, well, we don't care so much about what happens in Moscow. We have scores to settle down here with Azerbaijan. And maybe the Georgians now say, well, let them fight it out in Moscow. We'll settle our scores with the Ossetians here. In other words, a gigantic country, different ethnic nationality quarrels. They could be breaking out across the country. The direct opposite of what the people who launched this coup to establish order sought in the first place.
Stephen Cohen. Headline of the hour, 3 members of the coup leadership in Moscow are reported to have left. 2 of them resign. 1 says he has a heart ailment. One of the great stories of the last 10th of the 20th century still unfolding. We'll have full details on tonight's CBS Evening News. Dan Rather, see you then.
Crisis in the Kremlin has been a CBS News special report. This is CBS.
Good afternoon from CBS News. This is Newsbreak, Dan Rather reporting. There are signs that the leadership of the Soviet coup could possibly be unraveling. Sources say at least 2, possibly 3 leaders of the coup have resigned. Two of them reportedly became ill. Russian officials say coup leader Gennady Yanayev has promised not to launch an attack on the Russian parliament building, at least not over the next few hours. Tens of thousands of Muscovites have been holding a vigil outside. Tanks had been moving towards the area. So far, no tank has appeared at the parliament building. Now this.
It's fresh! Deli Select from Hillshire Farm. Lean cuts of premium meats. Deli sliced thin. Deli packed for freshness. Deli Select from Hillshire Farm. Delicious. It's fresh!
Full coverage on what's happening inside the Soviet Union and other news tonight on the CBS Evening News.
This CBS News special report is part of our continuing coverage of the crisis in the Kremlin. From CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
Drama in the dark in Moscow. It is after midnight Moscow time. Some armored personnel carriers, troop carriers, have tried to break through some barricades around the Russian parliament building, where the elected president of the Russian Republic, Boris Yeltsin, has been holed up, along with the former foreign minister, Edward Shevardnadze. Now, Tony Headley of CBS News is there and describes what is happening.
I'm standing at the corner of two boulevards, right next to the American Embassy. A series of about 10 APCs went through a barricade, and soldiers were firing arms, I believe, up into the air, and then went underneath this underpass underneath one of the boulevards. Now they are surrounded by people who are blocking their passage towards the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. As I'm speaking, I can hear the APCs moving, their engines roaring. I cannot see at this point. There's just been a shot. There's just been another shot, and the APCs were moving forward. People around me seem fairly quiet. There's just been several other shots up in the air. I've seen the burst against the black night. People are sort of going towards the APCs, but are being fairly cautious. They're fairly scared. Some more shots.
Tony, these armored personnel carriers, are any of them shooting towards the people or only into the air?
I haven't seen any shots that have gone towards people or seen any sort of impact that would prove that shots were fired towards people. The only shots I've heard, and I've also seen the bursts in the air. There's a lot of yelling going around. People are running backwards and forwards. I don't believe the APCs have been able to go through the barricade. I can see the barricade still standing. It's made up of long trolley buses put widthwise along this boulevard.
Have you any sense of how many armored personnel carriers involved?
There's just been a larger shot, a second with light up in the air. This is not light. These are not personal weapons. These must be the weapons on the APCs, which are shot up in the air.
This is Tony Headley of CBS News outside the Russian Parliament building, not too far from the Kremlin and very close to the U.S. Embassy. We want to go now inside the Parliament building to a Russian journalist, Soviet journalist, whom we dealt with over the years, who's inside the Parliament building now working for CBS News, Artyom Borovik. Are you there, Artyom?
The situation here is more or less okay inside the White House. No panic. Mr. Yeltsin has finished consultations with his advisors about 15 minutes ago and wanted to have a little rest. He no more rest. He is again with his advisors in his office. I'm on the 4th floor of the building of the White House. I see about 12 little fires, and smoke protection we can organize to make the tank commanders blind. You know, we don't want them to see us. We can hear Kalashnikovs firing. These are the modernized types of Kalashnikovs, automatic rifles, and this is I see a lot of people leaving the square here below me. People, as I understand, are a little frightened. This is not a usual situation in Moscow, and a lot of smoke. People still continue to construct barricades, which certainly are nothing in comparison with tanks and armored vehicles, which I see in front of me. I can also see American Embassy. It is all covered with smoke. I can see some lights there around the embassy. No lights in the rooms and in the offices of the embassy.
Artyom, excuse me now. We're going to try to go right back outside and pick up the description of Tony Headley of CBS News, who is outside the Parliament building. The situation, this is CBS News live coverage of what's happening in the wee hours of the morning in Moscow. Bursts of automatic weapon fire have been heard. Perhaps you could hear them earlier behind our man Tony Headley outside the building as he described armored personnel carriers trying to break through the barricades that Boris Yeltsin's Democratic supporters inside the Russian parliament had put up. Now, according to the Reuters news service, I want to double check that, no, this is United Press International, that a number of people have reported seeing soldiers on top of tanks along the Moscow Ring Road that runs about 2 blocks from where all this is happening, the Russian Republic's government headquarters. Let's see if we can pick up Tony Headley again with more eyewitness of what's happening with those armored personnel carriers, which fired apparently into the air, tried to break through the barricades, and then got surrounded by people supporting Yeltsin and Shevardnadze who are on the inside. Tony?
How many people are near you? What's the size of the crowd?
The size of the crowd is, I believe, around 500. It's very scattered. People are sort of going there and then coming back. I don't think they feel very much at ease. The militia is standing by and watching with everybody else. People are surrounding these APCs, though some of the trolley buses seem to be moving a bit. There's noise of their engines revving. There's no more military presence than these 8 APCs.
Well, it may be time to point out as Tony Headley pauses there, and you could hear some of the automatic weapons fire in the background. Tony said he could not see anyone aiming the fire at any of the people who are trying to protect the Parliament building. At the most he saw was the APCs firing into the air and trying to crack through the barricades. We want to make it clear that while the shots sound like automatic rifle fire, that it's impossible for us to tell whether it in fact was that. It certainly sounded that way, and it is not clear who is doing the firing. There is a belief that this may be an opening effort, a beginning effort to crack through the barricades and at least set up some kind of control by the Soviet coup leadership around that Russian Parliament building, but nobody has confirmed that belief. With Tony Headley of CBS News outside the Parliament building and our stringer Artyom Borovek inside the Parliament building, Dan Rather, CBS News, New York, will have full details on tonight's Evening News.
Crisis in the Kremlin has been a CBS News special report.
Good afternoon. This is a special live Western edition of CBS Newsbreak, updating the situation in Moscow. Sounds of gunfire in the early morning hours around the Russian Federation building. Armored personnel carriers tried to break through some of the barriers surrounding that building where tens of thousands of people are trying to protect Boris Yeltsin and his supporters. There is an unconfirmed report of 1 person dead. Ambulances were seen going into the area. Now this.
It's fresh! Deli Select from Hillshire Farm. Lean cuts of premium meats. Deli sliced thin. Deli packed for freshness. Deli Select from Hillshire Farm. Delicious.
It's fresh.
3 top leaders of the original coup have resigned. We'll have more on this rapidly moving story on the CBS Evening News.
This CBS News special report is part of our continuing coverage of the crisis in the Kremlin. From CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
Hello again. It's daylight now in Moscow. The night was filled with confusion, gunfire, and death. There were killings in the streets near the Russian parliament. At least 3 coup resistors reported dead. For the coup makers who threw out Mikhail Gorbachev, keeping power is proving tougher than taking it. Already 3 members of the original 8 who ousted Gorbachev are reported now out themselves. 2 of them, Defense Chief Yazov and Prime Minister Pavlov, are said to be victims of sudden ill health. And there's late word from the Baltics that Soviet troops have seized broadcast towers in Estonia and Lithuania. To update us now on what's been going on, let's go to our chief European correspondent, Tom Fenton in Moscow. Tom, good evening.
Well, good morning, Dan. So far, it's a standoff, I would say. Boris Yeltsin and his supporters are still holding out at the Parliament building. The army and the coup leaders do not yet have a firm grip on Moscow or on all of the Russian republics, and as long as the resistors hold out, there's a chance that the coup may eventually fail.
As dawn broke over the city and the curfew was lifted, it was clear it has not all been going the army's way here in Moscow. Shortly before dawn, several of the armored vehicles and tanks outside the Russian parliament building were captured by Yeltsin supporters. Whether the crews changed sides willingly is not clear, but they apparently did not put up much of a fight. Crowds cheered as the armored vehicles rolled through the streets carrying Yeltsin supporters. Personal efforts by the military commander of Moscow, General Smirnov, to negotiate the release of the tanks failed, and there are now reports that the general is being held by the Yeltsin people.
The resistors say they're preparing another memorandum for the coup leaders. They hope to have it signed by some of the other republics. And as we speak, more heavy armored units are moving into the center of Moscow. Now, clearly, all the heavy stuff is on the army's side, and if they wish to use it, they could take over the parliament building. The question is whether they wish to inflict large casualties, and that could touch off wide-scale fighting and perhaps a bloody civil war. Dan?
Thanks, Tom. The heart, the epicenter of resistance to the coup has been that area around the Russian parliament building in Moscow. Anthony Mason brings us up to the minute on the sights and sounds of the day and night at the barricades.
It was about midnight Moscow time, just an hour after the newly decreed curfew had gone into effect, when a group of Soviet light tanks loyal to the new hardline government began pushing through barricades near the U.S. Embassy and only a few blocks from the Russian parliament building. Yeltsin supporters threw Molotov cocktails at the tanks. 3 tanks reportedly caught fire. Within minutes, the first blood had been spilled on Moscow streets since the outset of the coup. Witnesses saw at least 3 people killed, crushed under the tank treads, and at least 12 others injured.
Паника и все что угодно. Там такие же люди, как мы на улицах.
One of them wanted to try to get in the tank, so they killed him.
The tanks did not advance on the Parliament building itself because, as CBS newsman Tony Headley witnessed from a nearby telephone booth, crowds blocked the way.
There are still APCs in the street. The crowd has possessed 2 of them and are holding hostage 3 other APCs. As I'm speaking, the crowd is gathering in bigger numbers around the exit of this underpass, and they're preventing the 3 hostage APCs from coming out.
Many believe the tanks were headed for the Russian parliament building, where thousands had barricaded themselves in defiance of the curfew. They'd spent the day reinforcing barriers, stockpiling Molotov cocktails, distributing gas masks, and standing guard. It's very serious, this policeman says, but we will defend ourselves. Inside, deputies said the atmosphere was that of a civil war.
But I think they will lose because they don't have the people's support.
Boris Yeltsin showed again today that he does. A sprawling crowd, tens of thousands, heard Yeltsin pledge, "We will hold out here as long as we have to remove this junta from power and bring it to justice." But the tension was visible as security men held bulletproof shields around Yeltsin to guard against any assassination attempt. Yeltsin was told by the new government today to curb his tongue and stop criticizing the committee. But the military commander reportedly promised not to assault the Russian parliament. It was, in the end, a day of conflicting signals. And everyone agreed the next 24 hours could well decide who will run this country. Anthony Mason, CBS News, Moscow.
It is difficult to determine what is going on outside of Moscow in the vast country that is the Soviet Union. We do know that there are other places of protest. For example, the country's second largest city, Leningrad, is holding behind Gorbachev and Yeltsin. About 200,000 people demonstrated today in Leningrad's main square. There was an even larger protest in the Moldavian capital, some 400,000 people there. The Soviet military, meanwhile, is hammering down on the breakaway Baltics. CBS News correspondent Peter Van Sant made his way into Estonia. He eyeballed what is happening there. Here's his report.
Independent Estonian television news reporting on the movement of Soviet military forces. This may be the final newscast. While Estonians watched in disbelief, columns of Soviet tanks rolled into the capital city of Tallinn. This is awful. I worry about my children, this woman says. What is to become of us, our future? At the civil airport, armed Soviet paratroopers landed and then took up positions on the outskirts of town. In the harbor, warships were on patrol. Responding to the military's intimidation, thousands of Estonians met in Tallinn's town square, showing support for their democratically elected government. They also protested the overthrow of Mikhail Gorbachev, a man they often clashed with in their drive for independence. Witnesses say fear is everywhere as Estonians wait for the army to strike.
Very pessimistic. People who had been brought to Siberia and returned were talking about the possibilities of being gathered up again and moved out somewhere else.
We saw some people crying, not very many, but some we notioned were crying. They were, what do you call it in English, they were stoned in their face, and some were crying. And
this was as they watched the tanks roll in?
The tanks roll in, yeah.
Inside Parliament, politicians prayed for their homeland. Outside, armed members of the Estonian Guard watched for Soviet troops. It's not known whether the Estonians will use their weapons.
There are people who feel that there will be blood, and there will be people who will stand up eventually.
The Estonian president says his people will struggle for democracy. Whether that struggle will turn violent is now up to the Soviet army. Peter Van Sant, CBS News, Tallinn.
Joining me now here at our CBS News headquarters is our friend who's helped us many times inside the Soviet Union, Vitaly Kurotic, editor of the popular progressive Soviet magazine Ogonyok. He's a member of the Soviet Parliament and a longtime supporter of President Gorbachev. Thanks for being with us, Vitaly. First of all, what do you know about Mikhail Gorbachev? Is he okay?
Today I had call from Moscow. They told me that junta want to fire Gorbachev as the head of the Communist Party because he's still General Secretary, and a lot of gossip that he was taken to Moscow, and they want to have plenum of the Central Communist Party Committee, which will change Gorbachev, replace Gorbachev as the head of the Communist Party. But main thing, Gorbachev don't want to support their junta. He don't want to resign. It's seriously, it's strong, and his reputation now going up. It's important.
So they're putting the heat on him. Do you think the junta, as you call it, will arrest Boris Yeltsin?
I think it impossible. He officially elected president. People support him. Of course, I always remember Salvador Allende in helmet with machine gun in his palace.
In Chile.
In Chile, it's possible to compare. But Yeltsin is really supported. If Yeltsin will be arrested, it will be general strike. I think it will be civil war. They must understand the level of their responsibility.
You think there will be a civil war?
No, to have civil war it's necessary at least to have two big ideas to fight for. Now we have not those ideas. We can have 30, 40 civil wars. But now those people who organize this criminal, illegal government, they practically unite all people against them. Estonians, Russians, everybody united against them. I think Communist Party of the Soviet Union commits suicide this Sunday.
Who is really behind this coup? Who is the heart of it?
KGB, of course, KGB, because KGB only professionals who know the art of coups, and Communist Party. Now Communist Party and KGB show that they're losing power. Practically all powers united in this, all they are over-national, transnational. All their powers which represent army, KGB party, those people who don't want to have union treaty, who want to have empire, not the union of independent nations. In this way they try to save themselves and they organize this.
Very quickly, because we have only a few seconds, Vitaly, what do you hear out of Georgia and the Ukraine?
I think resistance there will be strong, but these people who arrange this coup, they afraid to attack there directly. I think they have not enough loyal loyal army.
In Georgia and the Ukraine? In
Georgia and in Ukraine, they have few formations which are in Moscow and mainly very friendly to people. It's their problem.
Vitaly Gorbachev, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll be back in a moment to check in live on the tense situation around the Russian Parliament House as our coverage and analysis of the crisis in the Kremlin continues. We're now going to take you inside and outside the Gorbachev-Yeltsin movement's bastion, the Russian Parliament, in Moscow. First, on the outside, with CBS News correspondent Bert Quint.
As fog closed in and night fell, the pressure grew. Still at midnight, despite rain and curfew, thousands remained in the streets. They said they must defend their democracy. It was either victory or a concentration camp. Even when small arms fires sounded nearby, apparently from government troops trying to disperse another crowd, many Russians stayed on here. Some, thinking they were the target, formed human shields against an enemy they couldn't see. An enemy that on this night in Moscow did not come. As dawn came to the barricades, there was a sense of relief, but many of those who had stuck it out through the long, tense hours wondered if they could make it through another night. Bert Quint, CBS News, Moscow.
Now we go live inside the Parliament building with veteran CBS newsman Dan Raviv. Dan, what's it like in there?
Dan, there's talk of a deal in the works. People are trying to understand why there was no attack. It's not just a rumor of a deal, but, well, we had plenty of rumors during the night, but curfew was outside this building. We're technically all breaking the law to defend Russian democracy. There was a 10-minute warning. Tanks on the way. But
well, we lost the audio with Dan Raviv, but in the short time we had with that live report, we picked up one. Dan Raviv, very experienced foreign correspondent, says that there's the smell of a possible deal in the works, and he began to describe some of the psychological warfare has gone back and forth between these two sides, somewhat similar to what the government in power did in China with the resistors, the protesters in Tiananmen Square, when they played a long waiting game of psychological warfare with them. As we told you earlier, 3 powerful leaders of the new Kremlin ruling committee reportedly have stepped down and out. Prime Minister Pavlov, Defense Minister Yazov, and the KGB chief Khrushchev. Think of it, all 3 of these out. 2 of them said they were, quote, ill. Now, to find out why they went, we go back to Moscow, and Maxim Tkachenko, a commentator for Soviet National Television, with whom we've had conversations many times over the years. Thanks again for helping us. What about these reports that there's a possible deal in the works? Do you know anything about that?
Well, it is very hard to answer that question of yours so far, because we haven't seen these people in public for at least 36 hours or so from now. But the reports of those strange cases of illness, sudden and simultaneous, as well as the unconfirmed news of Defense Minister Yazov's resignation, certainly indicates that these people are in a turmoil. They have certain problems and they're confused pretty much. It looks like they were unprepared to face the kind of strong opposition they're facing now, both at home and abroad. And I think that many of these people are probably now regretting about what they have done. Dan?
Are you suggesting, or are you not, that there's now a real and present possibility that the coup will collapse and fail?
Possibility of what, excuse me?
Of the coup failing, of it just completely collapsing.
I think this is something we can expect. Can expect to come not in months, but in weeks, I think.
In a short time. Do you expect to see Mikhail Gorbachev president of the Soviet Union again?
I think we'll hear from Gorbachev very soon from now. At least we'll know his location.
You have no doubt that he's alive and well?
No. In fact, yesterday, Mr. Lukyanov, head of the Soviet Parliament, talked to the three leaders of the Russian Republic. And Mr. Lukyanov confirmed that President Gorbachev is out of danger, but he is still weak and he is still ill.
Thank you very much. We're going to go back live now and see if we can pick up Dan Raviv inside the Gorbachev-Yeltsin movement headquarters. Dan?
Dan, the point again is great relief here inside the Russian Federation Parliament building. It seems that Boris Yeltsin said through a spokesman during the night that he was working politically to avoid an attack on this building. There were in this building more than 100 members of the Russian Federation Parliament. There were even 5 members of the French Parliament visiting. Edward Shevardnadze, the former foreign minister, came here. A lot of heavy hitters, Dan, trying to avoid bloodshed, and at least this night they did.
Dan, there were scenes early in the day when the place was armed to the teeth and the first floor was mined and booby-trapped and gas masks were being held out. Is that still pretty much the atmosphere in there?
Yes, we've all got gas masks, and at every entrance to this building there's a crate full of Molotov cocktails, those milk and soda bottles filled with gasoline and little paper wicks or cloth wicks at the top ready to be lit. These people are ready for a fight if necessary. If the tanks come, they plan on fighting back.
Dan Raviv, thanks. Take care. When we come back on this broadcast, we'll have the latest on what President Bush has and has not done concerning the Kremlin upheaval. President Bush flew back to his vacation home in Maine late today after a day in the White House deciding what he could and could not do about what's happening in the Soviet Union. From a now hurricane-free Kennebunkport, Maine, Susan Spencer. Susan?
Good evening, Dan. Now, one of the things the President definitely wants to do is to reach Mikhail Gorbachev. So far, he has failed. He has tried for the last 2 days to get in touch with him. He has not been able to do so. On the other hand, he did reach Boris Yeltsin today, and at Yeltsin's urging, he repeated his support of Gorbachev. There was some feeling, we were told, among some of the democracy leaders in Moscow that the President's initial words had not been as emphatic as they could or perhaps should have been. Today, Mr. Bush referred to the coup plotters. He said the United States would never normalize relations with these people, and though he sent the newly confirmed ambassador Robert Strauss to Moscow on a fact-finding mission, he said that Mr. Strauss would certainly not be presenting his credentials to anyone associated with the coup. Meanwhile, the diplomatic wheels are grinding on. Secretary Baker left tonight for a NATO meeting tomorrow to talk about economic aid, which is, of course, the West's biggest tool in this. They'll also discuss the situation in Eastern Europe. What should be done should this new group of folks start posing any threat to Eastern Europe? It's sort of ironic, Dan, in a way. You know, this is the foreign policy president. This is the president who loves the challenge of foreign policy. I'm sure he would have just as soon have avoided this, though.
I have no doubt about that. Thanks, Susan. Joining us here now at our CBS News headquarters in New York, as he has throughout these disturbing days, is our consultant on Soviet affairs and Princeton University professor, our friend Stephen Cohen. Steve, Estonia announced today it's out. It declared its independence from the Soviet Union. What's the significance of any of this?
Dan, history has its ironies and politics plays its tricks. These guys sent these tanks because they thought Gorbachev was losing the Soviet Union, the empire. And yet by sending the tanks, they've probably done more to rip the Soviet Union apart than Gorbachev's democratization process ever would have done. Estonia, Georgia, the other Baltic countries, the Ukraine, Armenia, have all taken independent steps during this crisis, seizing the moment of confusion in Moscow. It's not clear you could ever put the puzzle back again.
Alexander Yakovlev, with whom you and I spoke when we were in Moscow just a short while ago, reported through CBS News today that he thought we were in the decisive hours of this battle, even as we speak. You agree?
Battle, yes. War, no. The historian in me, forgive me for the historian in me, tells me that you cannot build stable democracy in a country that's never experienced democracy, even in a single lifetime. This battle will be decided in the next few days. But the struggle for and against democracy is going to go on. If the Democrats somehow win against the tanks, the men who sent the tanks, the institutions, will still be around to fight again. If the Democrats lose, they'll fight on too.
And the economic problems and there are other problems the country will still be there. Steve, I know, because we've talked about it, that we have a difference of opinion about this. But nagging at me is the thought that if President Bush, Kohl in Germany, Mitterrand in France, Major in Britain, got together even now with a strong, forceful message, a chorus of strong words, I believe that words can make a difference, that they could make a big difference here, but it doesn't seem to be happening.
I'd like to think you're right, that if they all got together and said no in thunder to the people who carried out this coup, it could stop the coup. But I'm not sure I agree with you. I think the men who sent the tanks, they don't hate the West, but they hate democracy more than they care about the West.
And so you think the words can't make a difference?
It's too late. Remember this. They removed Gorbachev after he had been to London to meet the Western leaders and after President Bush had been to Moscow to endorse Gorbachev as a great leader. And Mr. Bush left, and shortly later, they removed Mr. Gorbachev. It's a contemptuous act, I think, toward Western opinion.
Steve Cohen, thanks. And that's our special report for tonight. There'll be more coverage and analysis on this CBS station as events inside the Soviet Union continue to unravel. There'll be more about it on Night Watch, and Harry Smith and Paula Zahn will have all the overnight developments on CBS this morning. For now, Dan Rather, thank you for joining us. I'll see you tomorrow on the evening news, if not before. Good night.
Stay with CBS News for continuing coverage of the crisis in the Kremlin. This is CBS.